After a pile of work, I'm at last on the home stretch as far as the fabrication work that I'm doing in reviving this Ballet sports sedan. And I want to turn my attention now to the cold air induction system. And what's on the car at the moment, I'm personally not real impressed with. You've got this giant intake plenum here, and it's made of carbon fibre, so most people who look at it go, oh wow, carbon fibre inlet plenum, how cool. But it's very much old school thinking. It's got this huge intake at the front and a large volume here. And as far as efficiency goes, well, I think we have smarter thinking these days. This is just a big space, and it's sort of like having your carburetors on one side of a lounge room and the door open on the other side. Just because you've got a large volume doesn't mean it's the most efficient way of getting air into your engine to get the best performance out of it. And look, back in the old days, you'll see pictures of cars with twin Webers and just trumpets sitting out the side of the car or facing up in the air. We know now that that's not the most efficient way of getting air into your engine. To get the most out of a cold air induction system, you need three things. First of all, you need cold air. And this at the moment, this half of the air it's pulling is right next to the radiator. So you're getting hot air, not cold air. So you need cold air. The second thing that you need is, yes, you do need volume and a smooth flowing shape. But the third thing that you need, which a lot of guys overlook, is you need airspeed. You need flow of the air through the system, sort of in the reverse way as that you need flow in your exhaust extractors to get the gases moving quickly out through your exhaust. You need the opposite in an induction system. You want that air to rush in. There's two other things I don't like about this existing cold air induction system. The first one is it's almost impossible to get it on and off the car. It's been fitted as a complete one-piece box, and the only way you can get it off is to put your hand right up inside the intake plenum and try to get your hand right up to here to get to nuts that are on the inside. It's almost impossible to get off, and you don't want that with a race car. You want to be able to get parts on and off. The second thing that I really don't like about it is there's no air filter. When I stuck my hands up inside, here's the tubes going straight into the Weber carburetors. So this car is not only ingesting dirt when it's on the racetrack, it's doing it even when it's on the trailer being towed to the racetrack. So any air that's blowing around with rubbish in it is going straight through. So I want to improve the flow of this system. I want to, and the efficiency of it, and I want to add an air filter. You can also see that the design of the shape of this intake plenum has been influenced by the shape of the bodywork that used to be here, and now that's no longer here. I've got much greater freedom to shape something that's more efficient. Because this is virtually impossible to get off, and because it's really only going to serve a purpose as part of a plug that I'm going to sculpt, I'm not going to try and undo it. With apologies to the car owner's wife, I'm going to cut it to get it off. But this gives me a chance to show you how to make your own cold air induction system that's efficient, that filters, and that's fun to make. 3 of the 4 bell mouths off, with every screw fighting me all the way. They're Allen key bolts that go into the Weber carburetors, steel bolts going into aluminium, and the bolts protrude out the back, and the protruding bit they'd all rusted, so as soon as I started to undo them, they started to bind. It's taken me an hour and a half with no body work here and with this plenum cut away to undo this. Now, there is just no way you would have been able, it would have been an impossibility to undo this on the car. And the gunk that's up inside this is just frightening. I've broken an Allen key trying to undo one of the bolts. I couldn't get it to turn, so I put a spanner on it to get leverage on it, and the Allen key broke. In 50 years working on cars, I have never had an Allen key break before. And the very last bolt won't come out. It is completely seized. I'm going to have to cut the head off the bolt and then drill and tap the carburetor. What a friggin' nightmare. Whoever designed this needs to be shot. I was talking to my client last night about air filters for these Weber carburetors, and looking up local products, I found these two. One had a paper element and the other one had a foam element. And then he said, well, what about foam sock filters? So I typed in 45 Weber foam sock filter into eBay, and I came up with these. Absolutely perfectly what we want, and they're designed to be able to be stretched over the trumpets. And I can build a plenum around those filters. That'll be a snug fit. They're in England and they'll take 2 to 3 weeks to get here, but that doesn't matter because all the measurements for them were in the ad, and that will allow me to get on to sculpting the plug for a plenum that will really make a snug fit over those filters. The type and the number of carburetors or EFI throttle body that you have on your race car may differ to this one. No problem, just design a plenum that will fit your situation and get some filters and see if you can include them into your design as well. To sculpt the plenum, I've cut out 2 base plates out of MDF. This one goes around the filters. And this rectangular one will be the base plate, which I've made to fit over the intake manifold. I don't want rounded edges on this. I want it square for reasons that'll become obvious later on. So somehow I have to now space these 2 pieces of timber out and blend a shape from the round to the square. Initially I thought, well, I'll just cut out a whole lot of bits of MDF and change the shapes as they go and screw them all together. Then I remembered that the best sculpting material is pouring foam. So that's what I'm going to use. The other thing I need to do is I need to make this dial plug for the plenum collapsible so that I can take it apart, because when I've made this plug, I'm going to be laying the composite over the top. So when it's hardened, I need to be able to remove the die easily, and the best way to do that is to make the die so that it's sacrificial and so that it will come apart. And you'll see how I do that as I make it. Well, here's the start of my die. I've got the bottom plate. I've put a large hole in it so that I can pour in the pouring foam, which will fill the void between the bottom plate and the plate that goes up near the filter. And I'm holding it together with long, large threaded rods, just some scrap stuff I had lying around, and I protected the threads with plastic tubing that'll just make it easier to dismantle. And then inside the stormwater pipe is bolted in place. I put a split down the middle of that so that when I've laid over the top of it and I'm trying to take this out, I can pull it in on itself and it'll collapse, and I'll be able to pull it out of the job. So now all I need to do is just put some plastic sheeting around there and fill it with pouring foam, a bit more sculpting, and I'll have my die. I've almost finished sculpting my die for the induction plenum, and I want you to notice that all the sides taper inwards. I'm going to pull the plug out this way, undo the bolts holding the pipe, and I'll pull the bulk of the die out that way, because this is open-ended. And then with this cut down the middle of this pipe, I'll twist it and pull it in on itself and pull it out. But when you're shaping a plug that you're going to lay composite over the top of, you've got to give thought to its shape as to how it will release. And so if I had a bump here or something like that, it would stop the plug being able to be pulled out, and I'd have to address that. Sometimes you can't avoid those sorts of additions, but when you're designing and shaping a plug to be laid over, make sure that you give careful thought to the shape of it and that it's going to release out of the overlay.